expressed in the newspapers, and plenty still to pick over on the bones of the autumn statement. In the Telegraph, Fraser Nelson, also of course editor of The Spectator, says today's era is one of borrow as much money as you want. It is the new conservatism. Peter Brooks in The Times has a reference to the old comedy Black and White of Harry Lloyd. Philip Hammond hanging off the hands of Big Ben, trying to cheer people up by singing, "If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands." Not good advice in those circumstances. Steve Bell in The Guardian has Theresa May, who he is portraying as a clown, and Philip Hammond as the Grim Reaper, saying happy days are here again as we head into the tunnel of record growth. Below that, the paper's columnist Martin Kettle says the attack on the forecast of the Office for Budget Responsibility reveals fanatical leavers will trash anyone who gets in their way. In The Times, their economist Phil Collins casts a worried eye at France, explaining why Le Pen is more dangerous than Trump. We'll be speaking to Phil Collins later this hour. Now, with me are John Crace of The Guardian and Jerry Peave of the Daily Mail. Also, since we're talking about money, our business presenter Ian King. Welcome to you all. So, and Fraser Nelson, I was quite interested by this piece because Fraser Nelson, of course, has been one of the cheerleaders in The Spectator for Brexit. But he's sort of saying, I didn't get what I wanted as a result in terms of economic policy.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a curious piece. It would almost be a piece that you could expect to find in The Guardian, really, because it doesn't come as a warning. Because sort of Philip Hammond seems to have turned on the taps, really. It's kind of spend. And, I mean, the killer line is right at the end for me, when he says that interest rates have actually tripled in the last 6 months or so. And that, you know, you can only borrow all this money if people have confidence that you're going to repay it. And as interest rates rise, the likelihood of repayment sort of diminishes.
I mean, what he's saying, Gary, is that, you know, this idea that interest rates are going to be low forever, so it doesn't really matter. History is probably against him on that one.
Exactly. Nothing is forever, as we've found out to our peril perhaps the last few months. But he's also making the point that debt is now £2 trillion, or £30,000 for every child in this country. I think it's probably time for Sky to consider bringing back its debt clock.
There we are. We've got it.
You thought of that.
Your wishes are come up.
Wonderful.
I mean, but against that, you know, there is this view, which I've heard from a number of bankers and everybody, that actually debt doesn't really matter, that we all got a bit overheated about austerity.
Well, we have to look at with the debt picture is a debt to GDP ratio, which is currently around sort of 83%. Now, you might recall George Osborne. There are a couple of very influential economists, Carmen Reinhardt and Ken Rogoff from Stanford University, who wrote a paper around 2010, and they said if your debt to GDP ratio goes above 90%, you're in trouble. Well, actually, Japan's got a debt to GDP ratio of more than 200%. The UK itself has had a debt to GDP ratio in that sort of region in the past, after the Second World War, for example, after the First World War. The point is, growth eventually lifts you off the rocks and makes that ratio look acceptable. The bigger question is really whether we're going to get any sort of meaningful growth in the economy over the next 5 years.
I mean, John, I mean, the question is really brought up by both Brooks and also by Steve Bell in their cartoons, is the government wants us to feel good. Do we actually need to feel good? I mean, we've taken a momentous decision. It might have difficult consequences. Do we need to feel good?
I think for me the curious thing is sort of Philip Hammond's position in all this is because he is now a sort of chancellor, sort of forced to sort of get Brexit through when he was sort of campaigning for Remain. So when he was giving his autumn statement, I detected a sort of slight edge of sort of I told you so, that this was going to be a bit harder than a lot of people suspected, and that, you know, there was a sort of slight sadistic air to him.
Well, certainly that's what the Brexiteers in the Tory party detected, that there was too much misery and it's all nonsense.
I don't think in the end Philip Hammond was quite as gloomy as we predicted he would be. He did give a little bit for the generation after all.
Who do you think is winning? I mean, Philip Hammond seems to me to be a gift for cartoonists, but Theresa May, who's getting Theresa May best? I mean, your cartoonist on The Guardian the great man Steve Bell, he's going for Mrs. May as a kind of rather grim clown. You think that's capturing her?
I think it is so far. I think she's still work in progress to the cartoonists. I think they're still trying to get a kind of handle on her because she's a sort of moving target at the moment. And I think, it took Steve Bell a while to get sort of John Major and Tony Blair and sort of David Cameron in his sights. But when he did, he sort of nailed them. I think we'll know better in about 6 months' time.
Yeah, now what about the business community? Are they getting on well with the new Prime Minister?
Well, funny you should ask that, Adam. There's a very interesting report out today from the Big Innovation Centre, which is an independent think tank, and they've basically taken an axe to Theresa May's proposals on boardroom pay. Now, we had on Monday the CBI conference where Mrs. May backed down on this plan to stick workers on boards, which had gone down like a cup of cold sick with business people. They absolutely hated the idea of that. So she's backed down from that. She got brownie points for that. Philip Hammond talked an awful lot about productivity in the autumn statement on Wednesday. A lot of business people like that. There was a definite change of tone from George Osborne in the fact that Osborne basically stopped all borrowing or tried to. When he became Chancellor, Hammond has accepted you need to invest in infrastructure. That's where the borrowing's going. He's earmarked it for that, not for day-to-day spending. Again, business loved that. Today you've got this report from the Big Innovation Centre basically arguing that what Mrs. May wants to do over boardroom pay, binding votes on directors' pay and compulsory publication of ratios between chief executives and the average employee. They don't want that. What's incendiary about this, Adam, is not only is this report backed by big business names like Sir Andrew Whitty, the outgoing chief executive of GlaxoSmithKline, Andy Haldane from the Bank of England has also endorsed this, which is going to really annoy.
Look, Gary, I mean, I suspect any clampdown on bosses' pay is going to be popular, isn't it?
Definitely, especially when it has grown so out of line with the average employee's pay. I mean, we're talking multiple times more. Of course, businesses don't like this because it will expose the huge disparity between ordinary workers, the ones doing the hard graft, and the ones at the top.
The problem with